The divorce was supposed to be simple. Sign the papers and disappear forever. But when Lena Carter walked into that boardroom 8 months pregnant, carrying the secret child of the city's most dangerous man, everything shattered. Adrian Vulov, feared, ruthless, and untouchable, stood frozen as his world collapsed in a single glance. She thought she could hide. She thought she could run. She was wrong. Now, with enemies circling and old wounds bleeding fresh, their past becomes a battleground where love and survival collide. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like descending into hell rather than ascending toward freedom. Lena Carter pressed one hand against the cool steel wall, steadying herself as another wave of exhaustion rolled through her. She was 8 months pregnant, and every part of her screamed for rest. Her swollen feet were crammed into the only professional shoes that still fit. Her lower back burned with a constant, grinding pain, and her entire body felt heavy with the weight of secrets she'd carried too long. But today would end it all. Today she would sign the divorce papers, collect the settlement her lawyer had negotiated, and disappear into a life Adrian Volkov would never touch again. The elevator chimed, a soft mechanical sound that felt too cheerful for what awaited her. The doors slid open to reveal the executive floor of Volkov Enterprises. It was all gleaming marble and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city sprawling below, like a kingdom Adrian ruled with an iron fist. Lena had been here before. 6 months into their marriage, she'd still believed love could change a man like him. She'd still worn hope like armor, thinking the gentle moments between them, rare as they were, meant something real. She knew better now. The receptionist, who Lena noted was probably one of dozens who'd cycled through this position, looked up with a professional smile. That smile faltered when she took in Lena's appearance. The cheap maternity dress, bought from a thrift store. The exhaustion carved into every line of her face. The very visible evidence of pregnancy that made the woman's eyes widen with poorly concealed shock. Lena quietly corrected her, saying her name was Ms. Carter. She hadn't been Mrs. Volkov for 8 months. Not since the night she'd packed a single bag and walked out of their penthouse, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the child growing inside her. She explained that she had an appointment with the legal department. The receptionist said, of course, her fingers flying across her keyboard. But Lena caught the nervous glance toward the closed double doors at the end of the hall. That was Adrian's office, where he built empires and destroyed anyone who stood in his way. The receptionist told her conference room 3 was down the hall to her left. They were waiting for her. They, not he. Adrian wouldn't be here. He'd promised through their lawyers, a cold, impersonal message that had somehow hurt more than his anger would have. He would sign remotely. She would sign in person. Their marriage would end the same way it had functioned, with distance and lawyers between them, clean and clinical. Lena told herself she was relieved. She told herself the twisting sensation in her chest was just the baby pressing against her ribs. She told herself a lot of lies these days. The conference room was exactly as she remembered, all dark wood and leather chairs, a massive table polished to a mirror shine, and windows that made you feel like you were floating above the city. It made you feel untouchable, like consequences were for other people. 2 lawyers waited inside, both in suits that cost more than Lena had earned in 6 months of waitressing since she'd left. They stood when she entered, a professional courtesy that felt like mockery given how her shoes pinched and her dress pulled tight across her belly. The older one, Henderson, Adrian's personal attorney for 15 years, gestured to a chair. He asked her to please sit and offered her water or tea. Lena said she was fine. She lowered herself into the chair with as much dignity as she could manage, which wasn't much. The baby kicked, a flutter of movement that made her breath catch. She just wanted to get this over with. Henderson exchanged a glance with the other lawyer, Simmons. He was younger, sharper, and watching Lena with a kind of clinical interest that made her skin crawl. They knew. Of course they knew. Adrian Volkov's lawyers knew everything, but they said nothing. Henderson opened a leather portfolio, withdrawing a stack of documents that represented the death of the marriage Lena had once believed would save her. He said everything was in order, and Mr. Volkov had signed all the necessary papers. Suddenly, the door burst open. Lena's head snapped up, her heart suddenly thundering against her ribs. Adrian Volkov filled the doorway like a storm made flesh. 6'3" of raw power wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a car. He looked exactly as Lena remembered, and nothing like the man she'd left. He seemed broader somehow, though that might have been the authority he wore like a second skin. His dark hair was slightly longer, touched with silver at the temples that hadn't been there before. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those eyes, ice blue and burning with an intensity that had once made her feel like the only woman in the world. Now they just made her feel trapped. Henderson shot to his feet, saying he wasn't expecting Mr. Vulov. Adrian's voice was low and controlled, the kind of quiet that made smart people obey immediately. He told them to get out. Both lawyers grabbed their portfolios and fled. The door clicked shut behind them with a finality that made Lena's pulse spike. And then they were alone. Adrian hadn't moved from the doorway. He stood frozen, his gaze locked on Lena with an expression she couldn't read. Shock, anger, something raw and bleeding beneath the surface that made her want to look away. But she didn't. She'd spent 8 months learning to be brave. She wouldn't break now. She told him he wasn't supposed to be here, and was proud of how steady her voice sounded. Even as her hands trembled in her lap, she reminded him they had agreed. He told her to stand up. It wasn't a request. Lena's chin lifted. She asked him to excuse her. He repeated, "Stand up." Each word was carved from ice. For a moment, she considered refusing. She thought about telling him he had no right to order her around anymore, that she'd left his world and his control behind. But something in his eyes stopped her. Something desperate beneath the fury that made her chest tighten. Slowly and carefully, she pushed herself to her feet. Adrian's gaze dropped to her stomach. The sound that escaped him was barely human, a sharp intake of breath like he'd been punched. His face went white, then red, emotions flickering across his features too fast to name. Shock, denial, rage, something that looked almost like hope. Lena couldn't let herself think it, couldn't let herself hope. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual command as he asked how long. "Adrian," she started, but he roared, asking again how long. The sound made her flinch and made the baby kick in protest. 8 months, the words came out as a whisper. She found out the night she left. The silence that followed was suffocating. Adrian moved then, stalking across the conference room with a predatory grace that made every instinct scream at Lena to run. But she held her ground. Even when he stopped inches away, he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke, achingly familiar. His hand rose, trembling slightly as it hovered near her stomach. He said that she left and had been carrying his child for 8 months and never told him. Lena stepped back, putting the chair between them. She told him not to dare make this about him. He didn't get to be angry. He didn't get to. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He said she was going to disappear. The divorce papers, the settlement. She was going to take his child and vanish. Bitter laughter escaped her. His child? She said this baby stopped being about him the moment she walked out that door. Adrian's hand slammed down on the table, the crack of flesh on wood making Lena jump. He yelled that she didn't get to make that choice. She yelled back that she got to make every choice. The words burst out of her, months of fear and anger and desperate survival pouring into them. She asked him if he wanted to know why she left, why she ran the moment she found out she was pregnant. He said yes, the word raw. He wanted to know why the woman he loved left. Lena's voice broke. It was because he would have trapped her, because he would have used this baby to chain her to him forever, because she saw what he did to Marcus Trent when he tried to leave his organization, how he destroyed his business, his reputation, his entire life, because he dared to walk away. Adrian's jaw clenched. He said that was different, that Marcus betrayed him. Lena's eyes burned with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She said she betrayed him too, didn't she? She left, she broke her vows. She took his child and ran. So she asked him, what punishment did he have planned for her? The question hung between them like a knife. Never, the word came out strangled. He said he would never, Lena. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so achingly familiar it made her chest hurt. He insisted she was different. She is different. Lena laughed, the sound hollow. She asked if she was, or if he just hid it better because he wanted her to stay. Adrian's expression shattered. For one brief moment, the mask slipped. Lena saw straight through to the man beneath, the one who'd held her during thunderstorms because she hated the lightning, the one who'd learned to make her grandmother's soup recipe when she was sick, the one who'd once looked at her like she was the only real thing in his manufactured world. Then the mask slammed back into place. His voice was controlled again, dangerous in its calm. He told her to sit down, that they needed to talk. No. Lena grabbed her purse, cheap pleather from the dollar store, so different from the designer bags he used to buy her. She said she was leaving and would have her lawyer contact his about the papers. She said goodbye, Adrian. She made it 3 steps toward the door before his hand caught her wrist. It was gentle, so careful not to hurt her, and somehow that was worse than force would have been. Please. The word sounded like it was killing him. Please don't go. Lena closed her eyes against the wave of longing that swept through her. 8 months. 8 months of running, hiding, working double shifts at a diner, where the manager screamed at her for moving too slow. 8 months of sleeping in a studio apartment where the heat barely worked, and the neighbors fought through paper-thin walls. 8 months of being so tired she could barely think, so scared she jumped at shadows, so desperately alone that sometimes she caught herself reaching for her phone to call the one person she could never call again. And here he was, right here, close enough to touch. She whispered for him to let her go. He said he couldn't. His other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. He told her he'd spent 8 months trying to find her. 8 months going insane. Wondering if she was safe, if she was happy, if she ever thought about him. The confession escaped before she could stop it. She thought about him every single day, and she hated herself for it. Something in Adrian's expression broke open. He asked her to stay, just for an hour, to let him explain. The world tilted. Lena felt it first as a wave of dizziness that made her grab Adrian's arm for support, then as a sharp, twisting pain low in her abdomen that made her gasp. Then as something warm and wet spreading down her legs. Adrian's voice seemed to come from very far away, asking what was wrong. She looked down. Blood. Too much blood soaking through her dress, pooling on the expensive conference room floor. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Her legs gave out. Adrian caught her before she hit the ground, his arms banding around her with desperate strength. His roar could probably be heard 3 floors down as he yelled for Henderson to call an ambulance now. Lena clutched at his shirt, panic clawing through her chest. She cried out about the baby. He shushed her, saying he'd got her. He was lowering her to the floor, his jacket already stripped off and pressed between her legs to slow the bleeding. He promised her she was going to be fine, that both of them were going to be fine. Lena cried that he couldn't know that. His hand found hers, squeezing tight. He said he knew because he wouldn't allow anything else. He wouldn't lose either of them. The conference room door crashed open. Henderson and Simmons stood there, both white-faced with shock. The ambulance was 3 minutes out. Adrian said that wasn't good enough. He was already scooping Lena into his arms, moving with the kind of controlled speed that came from a man who'd trained for combat. His car was faster. He told Simmons to drive. He told Henderson to call Dr. Rashid at Presbyterian and tell her they were coming in hot and to have a team ready. Lena's vision was starting to blur at the edges, gray creeping in from all sides. She told Adrian she was scared. He pressed his lips to her forehead, and his voice, when he spoke again, was the gentlest she'd ever heard it. He said he knew, but he was there now. He was there, and he wasn't letting her go. Never again. The elevator was a blur. The lobby was a streak of shocked faces and gasped exclamations. Then they were outside. The cold autumn air hit Lena's face like a slap, and Adrian was settling her into the back of a black SUV with leather seats and tinted windows. As Simmons peeled out of the parking garage with screaming tires, Adrian cradled her face, pleading for her to stay with him. She said she was trying, but the word was getting harder to form. She told Adrian she was sorry, so sorry, or he cut her off, fierce and absolute. He said she had nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Did she understand him? But she did. She had so much to apologize for running, for hiding, for being so scared of loving him that she'd nearly destroyed them both, trying to escape it. The confession fell from her lips like a dying breath. She loved him. She never stopped. She tried, but she never did. Adrian's voice was breaking. He knew, sweetheart. He loved her too, so much it was killing him. So he just told her to hold on, and they would figure everything else out later. The city blurred past the windows. Lena felt Adrian's hand gripping hers like a lifeline. She felt his other arm wrapped around her shoulders, holding her against his chest where she could hear his heart thundering. She felt the baby, their baby, moving weakly inside her. Please, she thought, though she wasn't sure who she was begging. Please, let them both be okay. Presbyterian Hospital rose up before them like a fortress. Simmons hadn't even stopped completely before Adrian was out of the car, with Lena cradled against his chest, bellowing for help. He was yelling for Dr. Rashid. A woman in scrubs appeared. She was in her mid-40s, competent-looking, her dark eyes sharp as they assessed the situation. She told Mr. Volov that Trauma Bay 2 was ready and to get Lena on the gurney. He said he wasn't letting her go. Dr. Rashid's voice was firm, but not unkind. She told him he didn't have a choice. He could come with them, but he needed to put her down so her team could work. For a moment, Lena thought Adrian might refuse. His arms tightened around her, his expression promising violence to anyone who tried to take her from him. Then Lena's hand touched his cheek. She whispered that it was okay to let them help. The tenderness in his eyes as he looked at her nearly broke her heart. Okay. He lowered her onto the gurney with infinite care, then immediately grabbed her hand again. But he wasn't leaving, not for a second. Dr. Rashid's gaze flicked between them, something knowing in her expression. She wouldn't dream of asking him to. Then she told her people to move. The hospital swallowed them. It was a chaos of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. Hands pulled at Lena's clothes, replacing them with a hospital gown. Monitors beeped. IV lines went in. Someone pressed an ultrasound wand against her stomach, and Lena held her breath, terrified of what they wouldn't find. The technician's voice was carefully neutral. The fetal heartbeat was present, 140 beats per minute, within normal range but showing signs of distress. Dr. Rashid announced it was a placental abruption, her hands already moving with practiced efficiency. A partial separation. They needed to get her to the operating room now. They had to prep for an emergency C-section. The word burst from Lena. No, it was too early. The baby wasn't ready. Dr. Rashid's eyes were kind but unyielding. The baby was at 32 weeks and was in distress. If they didn't deliver now, they could lose both of them. The world seemed to stop. Lena's gaze found Adrian's. He looked shattered, terrified, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. He asked what they needed from him. Dr. Rashid said she needed Lena to agree to the surgery, and she needed him to trust her to bring both of them through this safely. Lena's fingers tightened on his. What if? He leaned in close, his forehead pressing against hers. No what-ifs. He promised she was going to be fine. Their daughter was going to be fine. And when she woke up, he was going to be right there waiting for her. She asked him to promise. He swore it on everything he was, everything he had. He wasn't going anywhere. Dr. Rashid was already moving, the gurney starting to roll. Adrian walked beside it, never releasing Lena's hand, even when they reached the double doors marked surgery. Authorized personnel only. A nurse began to stop Mr. Vulov. He said one word, lethal as a bullet. Don't, he goes where she goes. The nurse looked at Dr. Rashid, who sighed. She told someone to get him scrubbed in, and to find him surgical scrubs that didn't make him look like he was about to commit murder. Adrian quietly said, thank you. Dr. Rashid's expression was grim. She told him not to thank her yet, but to just pray she was as good as he was paying her to be. They prepped Lena for surgery with terrifying efficiency. An epidural was placed, vitals monitored, and surgical drapes positioned. Through it all, Adrian stayed at her head. One hand gripped hers, the other stroking her hair, with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who'd built an empire on intimidation. As the anesthesia began to take hold, making everything fuzzy, Lena whispered that she was scared. Adrian's voice was the last thing she heard clearly. He knew, but he was right there, and he wasn't leaving. Not ever again. The world went soft and distant. Lena felt pressure, but no pain as Dr. Rashid worked. She felt Adrian's hand squeezing hers in a rhythm that might have been his heartbeat or a prayer. She felt time stretching and compressing in impossible ways until she heard a cry. It was thin and reedy, but unmistakably alive. Dr. Rashid announced it was a girl, and the triumph in her voice said everything. 5 pounds, 2 ounces, an APGAR score of 7. She was small, but she was a fighter. Adrian made a sound Lena had never heard from him before. Something between a sob and a laugh, raw with relief and wonder. Lena's words were slurred but desperate. She asked if she could see her. Briefly, a nurse appeared at her side holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She explained that the baby needed to go to the neonatal intensive care unit for observation. Lena's first glimpse of her daughter stole her breath, so small, so impossibly, devastatingly perfect. Dark hair plastered to her tiny head, her face scrunched up in outrage at being dragged into the world too early. But her eyes, when they opened for just a moment, were the exact shade of blue as her father's. Lena whispered, "Hi, baby girl," tears streaming down her face. She told her she was her mama, and she already loved her more than anything in this world. Adrian's hand came into view, one finger extended to stroke their daughter's cheek, with heartbreaking gentleness. He said he was her dad, his voice thick with emotion, and he was going to spend the rest of his life making sure she and her mother were safe and happy and loved. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Something in Adrian's expression transformed, cracked open, and was rebuilt in the space of a heartbeat. Lena saw it happen. She saw the exact moment fatherhood rewrote everything he was. He breathed that she was perfect. Lena couldn't look away from her daughter, but duck face. She agreed. The words burst from him. He was sorry for everything, for not being the man she needed, for making her so scared she had to run. Lena's eyes were drifting closed, exhaustion and medication pulling her under. She told him they would talk later. Right now, just stay. Both of them. Please stay. Always. Adrian pressed a kiss to her forehead. He promised her he was done being the man she had to run from. From now on, he was going to be the man she couldn't imagine living without. The last thing Lena saw before darkness claimed her was Adrian, watching their daughter being carried away to the NICU. His expression was a mixture of love and fear and fierce determination that promised the world was about to change. For better or for worse, they were in this together now. And nothing, not their past, not his empire, not the danger circling closer than either of them knew, would tear them apart again. Lena woke to the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the antiseptic smell of hospital air. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, or why her body felt like it had been hollowed out and stitched back together. Then it all came rushing back. The blood, the panic. Adrian's face white with terror and the thin, beautiful cry of their daughter being born too soon. Adrian's voice, rough with exhaustion, came from her left. Easy. Don't try to move yet. Lena's head turned and there he was. He was sprawled in an uncomfortable-looking chair pulled close to her bedside, still wearing surgical scrubs that were too small across his shoulders. His hair stood up in wild angles like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and stubble covered his jaw. It made him look almost human, instead of the polished, untouchable figure who ruled boardrooms and backrooms with equal authority. He looked wrecked. He looked beautiful. Lena's voice came out as a croak. The baby is she. She's perfect. Adrian was on his feet instantly, one hand finding hers, the other stroking hair back from her face with devastating gentleness. 5 pounds, 2 ounces of absolute perfection. The NICU team says she's breathing on her own. All her vitals are stable, and she's already proving to be as stubborn as her mother. Relief hit Lena so hard she felt tears spring to her eyes. She wanted to see her soon. Adrian's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Dr. Rashid wanted her to rest a few more hours first. He told her she lost a lot of blood and scared the hell out of him. The rawness in his voice made her chest ache. She said she was sorry. Don't! The word came out sharp. Then he softened it with a sigh. Don't apologize. Not for this. Not for anything that happened today. Lena studied his face, trying to read the emotions flickering across it too fast to name. She asked how long she was out. 6 hours. Adrian settled back into the chair, but kept hold of her hand, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Dr. Rashid said the surgery went perfectly. No complications. The placental abruption was significant, but they got our daughter out before his voice cracked, before it became critical. Our daughter. The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to unpack. Lena asked quietly if he'd been there the whole time. Where else would he be? She said. She didn't know. Running his empire, destroying his all the things Adrian Volov does when he's not sitting in uncomfortable hospital chairs. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. His empire could wait. His enemies could destroy themselves for all he cared right now. The only thing that mattered was in this room, and down the hall, in the NICU. Lena wanted to believe him. Part of her, the foolish, hopeful part that had loved him despite everything, desperately wanted to believe that the birth of their daughter had changed something fundamental. But she'd learned the hard way that Adrian's promises were built on shifting sand. She said they needed to talk. He knew. His grip on her hand tightened. But not right now. Right now, she needed to rest and heal. Everything else could wait, but Lena pulled her hand free, ignoring the flash of hurt in his eyes. Could it? Because from where she was lying, nothing had changed. He was still the same man she ran from. She was still the same woman who couldn't survive in his world. And now they had a daughter caught in the middle of all this mess. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. Everything has changed. Did he think she didn't know that? The moment he saw her walk into that conference room carrying his child, the The moment he heard her cry, his entire world shifted on its axis. She whispered that words were easy. He was always good with words when he wanted something. Adrian flinched like she'd slapped him. Was that what she thought this was? Him manipulating her? She didn't know what to think anymore. Exhaustion washed over her, bone deep and overwhelming. She was so tired, tired of running, tired of being scared, tired of not knowing if loving him was going to destroy her. He leaned forward, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. Then stop running. Stay. Let him prove to her that he could be different, that he could be the man she needed, the father their daughter deserved. And if he couldn't, then she could walk away with his blessing and enough money to give their daughter the best life possible. The words seemed to cost him. He'd sign away custody rights, if that's what it took for her to feel safe. He'd disappear from both their lives if that's what she wanted. Lena searched his face for deception and found only raw, bleeding honesty. He'd do that if it meant she was happy and safe? Yes. Adrian's hand came up to cup her cheek, and she was too tired to pull away. He'd do anything for her. He thought she knew that by now. Lena corrected him softly. She knew he'd do anything to keep her. That's not the same thing. The distinction landed like a blow. Adrian's hand dropped, and for a moment his mask slipped completely, revealing the devastation beneath. Did she really think he was that much of a monster? Lena's eyes drifted closed. She thought he was a complicated man who loved in complicated ways, and she thought she was too tired to figure out if those ways were enough. Silence settled between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Then Adrian spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. When he couldn't find her for 8 months, he nearly lost his mind. He hired investigators, called in favors, turned the city upside down, looking for any trace of her. Did she know what he found? Lena's eyes opened. What? Nothing. She vanished so completely it was like she'd never existed. Something that might have been pride flickered across his face. She covered her tracks better than professionals he'd worked with. Changed her name, paid cash for everything, stayed off social media, worked under the table. She disappeared like a ghost. There was no humor in her voice. She learned from the best. She watched him to make people disappear for years. She just never thought she'd be using those lessons to hide from him. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. He deserved that. He deserved all of it. The running, the hiding, even the months of not knowing if she were alive or dead. He drove her to it. Yes, Lena said simply, he did. His gaze held hers, unflinching. He couldn't take it back. He couldn't undo the things he did that made her so scared she had to run the moment she found out she was pregnant. But he could try to do better if she'd let him. Before Lena could respond, the door opened and Dr. Rashid stepped in. She looked significantly more rested than the last time Lena had seen her. She was glad Lena was awake and asked how she was feeling. Lena admitted she felt like she got hit by a truck. Dr. Rashid said that was about right as she moved to check her vitals. She told Miss Carter she gave them quite a scare. Placental abruptions are no joke, especially in the 3rd trimester, but the baby's okay. Their daughter was doing remarkably well, all things considered. Dr. Rashid smiled. She was breathing on her own, maintaining her body temperature, and already demanding to be fed every 2 hours, like clockwork. She's small, but she's fierce. Adrian said quietly that she gets that from her mother. Dr. Rashid's eyes flicked between them, professional and assessing. She understood the situation was complicated, but that baby needed both her parents right now. She was going to be in the NICU for at least a few weeks, maybe longer, depending on how she developed. That meant the two of them needed to figure out how to be in the same room, without the kind of stress that nearly killed Miss Carter today. Lena started to say that wasn't it. Dr. Rashid interrupted firmly. The abruption was likely caused by a combination of physical and emotional stress. Lena's blood pressure when she came in was dangerously high. She'd been working herself to exhaustion, eating poorly, and living in a constant state of fight or flight. At a highly charged emotional confrontation, and her body simply gave out. Shame washed over Lena. She didn't mean to. Dr. Rashid's voice gentled. Nobody means to have a medical crisis, but moving forward, she needed to take better care of herself, which meant rest, proper nutrition, and as little stress as possible. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. She'll have it, whatever she needs. Good. Dr. Rashid turned to him, and he needed to understand that his daughter's mother was recovering from major surgery. She needed support, not pressure. Could he do that? Yes. Adrian's gaze never left Lena. Whatever she needs, he repeated. Dr. Rashid nodded, satisfied. She'd have the nurses bring Lena some food. Once she'd eaten and rested a bit more, they could take her down to see her daughter. She left, and the silence that followed felt different somehow, less combative, more uncertain. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral, but Lena could hear the anger simmering beneath it. He repeated what the doctor said about her, working herself to exhaustion. Where? Doing what? She said it didn't matter. The neutral tone cracked, like hell it doesn't. Lena, she was 8 months pregnant, and apparently working so hard she made herself sick. That matters. She said flatly. She was waitressing at a diner in Queens. Double shifts most days because the tips were better during peak hours. Adrian's face went white, then red. She was on her feet for 12-hour shifts while pregnant. She needed the money. The words exploded out of him. She had money. He made sure of it. He set up accounts in her name, transferred funds. Lena's chin lifted. She didn't touch any of it. She didn't want his money. She wanted to do this on her own. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. On her own? Right. Because nearly killing herself and their daughter was so much better than accepting help from him. It was better than being trapped. Didn't he trap her? Lena sat up straighter despite the pull of surgical stitches. The penthouse he insisted she move into after their third date. The job at his company that she didn't apply for, but somehow got anyway. The credit cards in her name that he paid off every month. The security team that followed her everywhere she went. He didn't trap her. He built a gilded cage and made it so comfortable she didn't realize she was locked inside until it was too late. Adrian looked like she'd gutted him. He was protecting her. From what? She was a waitress from Queens. She didn't have enemies. She didn't need protection. His voice dropped to something raw and honest. She had him, and anyone connected to him was a target. He was trying to keep her safe, by controlling every aspect of her life, by loving her the only way he knew how. The confession hung between them, sharp and bleeding. Lena's breath caught. That's not love, Adrian. That's obsession, maybe. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window like he couldn't bear to sit still anymore. Maybe she was right. Maybe he didn't know the difference between the two. But he was trying to learn. For her, for their daughter. Lena's voice broke. Trying isn't enough. She needed guarantees. She needed to know that if she let him back into her life, into their daughter's life, he wouldn't suffocate them both. Adrian turned from the window, and the expression on his face made Lena's heart stutter. Gone was the polished businessman, the feared power broker. In his place stood a man stripped bare, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. He said quietly he didn't have guarantees to give her. He didn't know how to be anything other than what he was. But he swore to her he would spend every day for the rest of his life trying to be worthy of her and that little girl down the hall. Even if it meant tearing down everything he built. She said he couldn't tear down his empire. It's who he was. No. He crossed back to her, dropping to one knee beside the bed so they were eye level. Their daughter is who he is now. She is who he is. Everything else is just noise. Lena wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to believe that the man kneeling before her could really change, could really become someone she could trust with her heart and her child's future. But belief and reality were two different things. She whispered that she needed time. Adrian's hand found hers again. Then take it. Take all the time she needed. He'd be there. Not pushing, not demanding, just there. A knock at the door interrupted whatever Lena might have said next. A nurse poked her head in, smiling. Miss Carter, the NICU team says, if you're feeling up to it, you can come visit your daughter now. Every thought fled Lena's mind except one. My baby. Yes. She was already pushing herself upright, ignoring the sharp pull of incision sites. Yes, please. Adrian was there instantly, supporting her weight as the nurse hurried over with a wheelchair. Wow, easy. Let's not undo all of Dr. Rashid's excellent work. Getting into the wheelchair was an exercise in humiliation and pain, but Lena gritted her teeth through it. Nothing, not pride, not pain, not the complicated tangle of feelings for the man hovering protectively at her side, was going to keep her from her daughter 1 second longer. The journey to the NICU felt both endless and too short. Adrian walked beside her wheelchair, one hand resting on her shoulder, like he couldn't bear not to touch her. The nurse navigated them through a maze of corridors until they reached a set of double doors marked with cheerful cartoon animals and strict visiting protocols. The nurse explained they'd need to scrub in, showing them to a bank of sinks. 3 minutes, soap up to your elbows. Mr. Volkov, that includes you. They washed in silence, the only sound the rush of water and the distant beeping of monitors. Lena watched Adrian out of the corner of her eye. The careful, methodical way he scrubbed his hands and forearms, the tension in his shoulders, the almost imperceptible tremor in his fingers. She realized he was terrified. This man who commanded empires and crushed enemies without blinking was scared to death of meeting his premature daughter. Lena said softly that she's not going to break. Adrian's hand stilled under the water. How did she know? Because she's ours. Lena met his eyes in the mirror above the sinks. And if there's one thing we both are, Cyrus. Something in his expression shifted, softened, and sharpened at the same time. When did she get so wise, Ace? Around the time she had to figure out how to survive without him. The words landed like a blow, but Adrian just nodded, accepting them. He told her to teach him. Teach him how to be strong enough to let her go if that's what she needed. He didn't know how, but he'd learn. Lena's throat tightened. The nurse appeared with towels and warm smiles. Time's up. Come on, let's go meet that beautiful girl. The NICU was quieter than Lena expected. All soft lighting and hushed voices and tiny isolettes holding tiny humans fighting for their lives. The nurse led them past rows of bassinets to one near the back, and Lena's heart stopped. There she was, so small she barely seemed real, lying on her back with wires and monitors attached to her tiny body. She wore a diaper that looked comically large on her bird-thin legs, and a knit cap that kept slipping over her eyes. Her face was scrunched up in what Lena already recognized as indignation at the indignity of being born before she was ready. Oh, Lena breathed. Oh, she's perfect. Adrian's voice was thick with emotion. She is. She's absolutely perfect. The nurse smiled. You can touch her. Skin-to-skin contact is excellent for preemies. It helps regulate their temperature and heart rate. Lena reached out with trembling hands, her fingers stroking down her daughter's impossibly soft cheek. The baby stirred, making a sound somewhere between a squeak and a protest, and Lena felt her heart crack open and reform around this tiny, fierce creature, she whispered. Hi, baby girl. It's Mama. I'm here. I'm right here, and I'm never leaving you. Adrian's hand joined hers, his large palm covering their daughter's entire torso with room to spare, and he said he was her dad, wonder saturating every word. And he was going to make sure she had everything she needed, everything she wanted. Lena's voice held a warning. She was going to give her the world. Adrian. He looked at her and his expression was so open it hurt to see. What? It's true. You can't buy her love. His thumb stroked across their daughter's tiny hand and impossibly the baby's fingers curled around it. He wasn't trying to buy it. Adrian made a sound like he'd been punched. He just wanted her to have everything he didn't. Lena had never asked about Adrian's childhood. In the year they'd been married, he'd kept that part of his life locked away behind walls. She'd never been able to breach. But in this moment, with their daughter holding his finger and him looking at her like she was a miracle, those walls cracked. Lena asked softly what he didn't have. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said safety, stability, a parent who chose me over everything else. The confession made Lena's chest ache. He continued, still watching their daughter. His father was a lot like him. Powerful, ruthless, good at making money and enemies in equal measure. And his mother, she tried to leave him when he was 5. She took him and ran, just like Lena did. Lena's breath caught. What happened? He found them. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant the emotions were too big to let out. He dragged them both back, sent his mother to a psychiatric facility for exhaustion and delusions, and spent the next 13 years making sure he never forgot what happens when people try to leave. Lena's hand found his, squeezing tight. That's not going to happen. You're not him. His laugh was bitter, isn't he? He spent 8 months hunting for her. If he'd found her, would he have let her go? Or would he have done exactly what his father did? But he didn't find her. No. He looked at her finally, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. She was smarter than his mother, better at hiding. And maybe that's for the best. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Adrian turned back to their daughter, watching her breathe with the kind of fierce attention he usually reserved for business negotiations. If she'd stayed, if he'd found her, he would have held on so tight he'd have broken them both. But she got away. She saved herself and her. So maybe the best thing he could do now was just let her keep running. The words surprised Lena as much as they seemed to surprise Adrian. I don't want to run anymore. I'm tired of running. Tired of being scared. Tired of our daughter growing up with a father who's just a name on a check. Hope flickered across Adrian's face, fragile and terrifying. What was she saying? Lena took a breath. She was saying she wanted to try. Not for them. Not yet. But for her, she deserved to have both her parents in her life, really in her life, not as enemies fighting over custody or strangers passing her back and forth like a parcel. Her name sounded like a prayer, Lena. He swore to her he wouldn't. She had conditions. Adrian straightened. And just like that, the businessman was back. Sharp, focused, ready to negotiate. He told her to name them. She keeps her own apartment, her own space. He doesn't get to control where she lives or how she spends her time. Done. She goes back to work when she's ready, not at his company. Somewhere she chooses, doing something she wants to do. Agreed. And if at any point she feels like he's trying to trap her again, trying to control her or manipulate her, or build walls around her life, she walks away with their daughter, and he doesn't follow. That one hit harder. Adrian's jaw clenched, every line of his body screaming resistance. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. Agreed. Just like that? He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, just like that. He told her he'd do anything to prove he could be the man she needed, even if it meant letting her go. Lena searched his face for deception and found only weary sincerity. Okay, we'll try. She looked down at their daughter, who had fallen asleep with her tiny hand still wrapped around Adrian's finger. For her, they'll figure out how to be parents together. Everything else, they'll take it one day at a time. Adrian repeated, one day at a time. He could do that. A different nurse approached. This one older with kind eyes and competent hands. Miss Carter, we should get you back to your room. You need rest. But Lena looked at her daughter, panic rising. She just got here. She couldn't leave her. The nurse said gently that she's not going anywhere, and she could come back in a few hours. But Dr. Rashid would have her head if she let her overdo it on her first day post-op. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to plant herself beside that isolette, and refused to move. But exhaustion was already pulling at her, making her limbs heavy and her thoughts fuzzy. Adrian said quietly, he'll stay with their daughter, so she's not alone. The nurse looked like she wanted to argue that too, but something in Adrian's expression stopped her. All right, Mr. Volov, but you follow all the rules. No touching without washing your hands first. No. Adrian's attention never left the sleeping baby. He understood. He'd follow every rule to the letter. Lena let them wheel her back to her room, but her heart stayed behind in the NICU, split between the daughter she'd just met and the man she'd once loved watching over her. Back in her hospital bed, Lena stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. This morning, she'd been a terrified woman about to sign divorce papers and disappear. Now she was a mother recovering from emergency surgery and tentatively agreeing to let Adrian Volkov back into her life. It felt like insanity. It felt like hope. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, soft voices were pulling her back to consciousness. Lena's eyes opened to find Dr. Rashid standing at the foot of her bed, reviewing her chart with a frown. Lena asked if something was wrong, her voice rough with sleep. Dr. Rashid looked up, her professional mask in place. Her vitals were improving, which was good, but she was concerned about her living situation post-discharge. What did she mean? She'd be recovering from major surgery while caring for a premature infant who would need round-the-clock attention. The apartment address in her file? Dr. Rashid hesitated. She took the liberty of looking into it. 4th floor walk-up in Queens. No elevator. Questionable heating. That wasn't going to work. Shame burned in Lena's chest. It's what she could afford. Dr. Rashid understood, which was why she was recommending she accept Mr. Volkov's offer to stay at his residence during her recovery. He made an offer about an hour ago. Dr. Rashid's expression was carefully neutral. Full-time nursing staff, physical therapy, nutritionist, anything she needed. He's already had contractors start work on a nursery. Of course he had, because Adrian Volkov didn't know how to help without taking over completely. Lena said she couldn't, can't or won't, both. Lena pushed herself upright. She appreciated the concern, Dr. Rashid, but she wasn't moving into Adrian's penthouse. That was exactly the kind of control she was trying to avoid. Even if it was better for her daughter, the question hit like a physical blow. Lena whispered that wasn't fair. Dr. Rashid's voice softened. No, it's not, but it's reality. Her daughter was going to need extensive care when she's released from the NICU, feeding every 2 hours, monitoring for complications, possible physical therapy. Could she do all that alone in a 4th floor walk-up while recovering from surgery? Lena wanted to say yes. She wanted to insist she could handle anything, that she didn't need Adrian or his resources or his help. But she'd learned something in the past 8 months of struggling alone. Pride didn't keep you warm, and it didn't feed babies. Lena asked slowly if there was a middle ground. Dr. Rashid was listening. What if she stayed somewhere close to the hospital? Not Adrian's penthouse, but maybe a hotel. Adrian's voice came from the doorway, already arranged. Both women turned to find him standing there with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that managed to be both triumphant and cautious. A suite at the Carlisle, 3 blocks from the hospital, 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, 24-hour room service. He'd taken the liberty of putting it in her name. Lena stared at him. When did he arrange all this? While she was sleeping. He crossed to Dr. Rashid, handing her one of the coffee cups. He figured she'd argue about the penthouse, and he figured she'd be right, so he found an alternative. Lena pointed out that in her name meant he was paying for it. Adrian's tone brooked no argument. He was paying for his daughter's mother to have a safe place to recover. That's not control. That's basic human decency. Dr. Rashid said he was right, and frankly, Miss Carter, her health and her daughter's health were her primary concerns. If she wanted to argue about who pays the bills, she should do it after they were both stable. Lena looked between them, feeling cornered. She needed to think about it. Dr. Rashid advised her to think fast. She'd be discharged in 48 hours. Her daughter would be there for at least 2 more weeks after that, during which time she'd need to be close for feeding and bonding. A hotel suite 3 blocks away made a lot more sense than Queens. She left, taking her coffee and leaving Lena alone with Adrian. Lena said quietly he couldn't just steamroll her into decisions. He wasn't trying to. Adrian set his coffee down and moved to sit in the chair beside her bed. He was trying to solve problems. It's what he did. By throwing money at them, if money solved the problem, then yes. He met her gaze steadily. She needed a safe place to recover. Their daughter needed her close while she was in the NICU. He had the resources to make both those things happen. This wasn't control, Lena. It was just logistics. She laughed, the sound hollow. Logistics? He was very good at making everything sound reasonable. Because it was reasonable. Adrian leaned forward, but if she truly didn't want the hotel suite, he'd cancel it. She could go back to Queens, climb 4 flights of stairs multiple times a day, post-surgery, and commute 2 hours each way to see their daughter. He wouldn't stop her, but he'd judge her for it. No, the word was quiet but firm. He'd worry about her. There was a difference. Lena closed her eyes, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in her chest. Part of her wanted to refuse on principle, to prove she didn't need his help. But a larger part, the part that was already a mother, already fierce and protective, knew he was right. Fine, she said finally. The hotel suite, but it's temporary, of course. And she'd pay him back eventually if it made her feel better. It did. Lena opened her eyes, and Adrian, no more surprises. No more arranging things without asking her first, even if he thought they were helpful. Something flickered across his face. Frustration, maybe. Or resignation. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. Agreed. From now on, they'd make decisions together. Lena repeated, testing the word. Together. It felt foreign, dangerous, like stepping onto ice and hoping it would hold. But it also felt like the only path forward that didn't end in either suffocation or isolation. Adrian confirmed. Together. He stood, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Now get some rest. Their daughter was going to want to meet her mama again soon, and she needed her strength. He left, and Lena was alone with her thoughts and the ghost of his kiss burning on her skin. Tomorrow, she'd meet with lawyers and figure out the logistics of co-parenting with a man who lived in a different world. Tomorrow, she'd navigate the complicated waters of letting Adrian help without letting him control. But tonight, she was just a new mother, tired and scared, and fiercely in love with a tiny human she'd only just met, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 3 days later, Lena stood in the hotel suite Adrian had arranged and tried not to feel like she was surrendering. The Carlisle was exactly the kind of place she'd expected. All understated luxury and perfect service. The sort of establishment where staff appeared before you realized you needed something and disappeared just as quickly. The suite itself was beautiful in that effortless way only money could buy. Cream-colored walls, plush furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, and windows that overlooked a small private garden 3 stories below. It was perfect. Lena hated it. The concierge was saying. The second bedroom had been set up as a nursery, gesturing toward a closed door. Mr. Volkov specified that they should stock it with everything she might need, but if there was anything missing, she shouldn't hesitate to call. Thank you. Lena's voice was polite but distant. She'd perfected this tone over the past 3 days. Grateful but not warm. Accepting but not welcoming. It was the voice of someone who knew she was being helped, but resented needing the help. The concierge left, and Lena was finally alone in her gilded cage. She moved slowly toward the nursery door, her surgical incision pulling with each step. Dr. Rashid had cleared her for discharge with strict instructions. No lifting anything heavier than the baby. No climbing stairs. Strenuous activity for at least 6 weeks. The list of restrictions felt endless, a constant reminder of how vulnerable she was right now. The nursery took her breath away. Soft gray walls, white furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, and a crib that probably cost more than 3 months of her former rent. Shelves lined with books and toys, a changing table stocked with every supply imaginable, and a rocking chair positioned near the window where light streamed in like liquid gold. It was perfect for a baby who wouldn't be coming home for at least another week. Lena sank into the rocking chair and let herself cry for the first time since the surgery. Quiet, exhausted tears that came from somewhere deeper than grief, from the place where fear and relief and overwhelming love tangled into something too complex to name. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "How's the suite?" Lena stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "It's fine, thank you." 3 dots appeared immediately, dancing for several seconds before his response came through. He was heading to the hospital now. Did she want him to pick her up? They'd fallen into a routine over the past 3 days. Adrian would arrive at the hospital in the morning, spend a few hours with their daughter, then leave to handle whatever empire building required his attention. Lena would arrive in the afternoon and stay until the NICU staff gently but firmly sent her back to her hospital room to rest. They'd managed to avoid being there at the same time by unspoken agreement, orbiting their daughter like planets, afraid to collide. But now Lena was mobile enough to set her own schedule, and avoiding Adrian would become exponentially harder. She typed that she could get there herself. The response was immediate. She was 3 days post-surgery. Let him drive her. She was capable of taking a taxi. He knew she was. He was asking anyway. Lena closed her eyes, fighting the urge to throw her phone across the room. This was the problem with Adrian. He phrased control as courtesy, made demands sound like requests, and somehow always managed to make her feel unreasonable for wanting independence. But he was also right. The short walk from her hospital room to the NICU had exhausted her yesterday. A taxi ride across 3 blocks, followed by navigating the hospital alone, would be pushing it. Fine, she typed, but she was paying for gas. Even through text, she could sense his amusement. It was a company car. Gas was already covered. Then she was buying him coffee. Deal. He'd be there in 20 minutes. Lena used the time to make herself presentable, brushing her hair, changing into clean clothes that weren't maternity wear, but still hung loose around her, still swollen middle. She applied just enough makeup to hide the worst of the dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost of herself, pale and drawn, and running on nothing but stubborn will and the desperate need to see her daughter. The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Adrian stood in the hallway looking unfairly put together in dark jeans and a gray sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He'd shaved since yesterday, and his hair was still slightly damp like he'd showered recently. He looked good, rested, like he was sleeping instead of spending every waking moment torn between terror and wonder the way Lena was. He asked if she was ready, as she'll ever be. The elevator ride down was silent and awkward. Adrian kept glancing at her like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Lena stared at the descending numbers and tried not to notice how good he smelled, how the warmth of his body next to hers made her want to lean into him the way she used to. The car was waiting at the curb, a sleek black sedan with a driver who nodded politely but didn't speak. Adrian held the door for her, and Lena climbed in carefully, trying not to wince at the pull of stitches. As he slid in beside her, Adrian observed that she was in pain. She said she was fine. "Lena, I'm fine." She turned to look out the window as the car pulled into traffic. It's just normal post-surgical discomfort. Nothing to worry about. When she was in pain, it was something to worry about. Then he was going to be worried for the next 6 weeks because everything hurt right now. Lena immediately regretted the words. They came out sharper than she'd intended, bitter with exhaustion and frustration. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then asked what he could do. Nothing. Lena closed her eyes. There was nothing he could do. She just had to heal. There had to be something. better pain medication, physical therapy. She opened her eyes to find him watching her, with an expression that was equal parts helpless and determined. He couldn't fix this with money. Some things you just had to endure. The confession came out raw. He didn't know how to do that. He didn't know how to watch her hurt and not try to make it stop. Lena's voice gentled despite herself. Then he was going to have a hard time being a parent. Because kids get hurt. They fall down. They get sick. They have their hearts broken. And sometimes all you can do is be there while they heal. Adrian looked away, jaw clenched. He wasn't good at being helpless. Neither was she. Lena reached out before she could stop herself, her hand finding his. But they were going to have to learn together. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and achingly familiar. For the rest of the short drive, they sat in silence, hands clasped between them, like a bridge. Neither was quite ready to cross. The NICU staff greeted them with warm smiles and gentle efficiency. Over the past 3 days, Lena had learned all their names. Nurse Patricia, with her no-nonsense attitude and surprisingly gentle hands. Nurse James, who sang softly to the babies when he thought no one was listening. Dr. Chen, who checked on their daughter every 4 hours like clockwork. Patricia reported as she led them to their daughter's isolette that she had a good night. She took all her feedings, maintained her temperature, and her oxygen saturation levels were improving. At this rate, they might be able to move her to an open crib in a few days. Lena's heart leaped. Really? Patricia smiled. She was a fighter, this one, determined to prove she didn't need all this fancy equipment. Their daughter was awake when they reached her, tiny fists waving in what looked like indignation at being confined. She'd grown in just 3 days. Or maybe Lena was just getting better at seeing her as a whole person, instead of a terrifying collection of fragile parts. Lena reached in to stroke her daughter's cheek, marveling at the softness of her skin. "Hi, sweet girl. Mama's here." The baby turned toward her voice, and Lena's breath caught. Every single time those blue eyes opened, Lena fell in love all over again. She asked Patricia if she could hold her. "Absolutely. Let me get you set up for kangaroo care." 10 minutes later, Lena was settled in a recliner with her daughter tucked against her bare chest, skin to skin under a blanket. The baby was so small, so impossibly light, but her heartbeat was strong and steady against Lena's ribs. Adrian sat in the chair beside them, watching with an expression that made Lena's throat tight. She asked quietly if he wanted a turn. He looked almost afraid. He didn't want to disturb her. He wouldn't. Lena shifted slightly, mindful of the wires and monitors. She should know both her parents. Adrian moved like he was approaching something holy, stripping off his sweater with careful movements before settling into the recliner. Patricia helped transfer the baby with practiced ease. And then Adrian was holding his daughter against his chest, looking absolutely terrified. Lena instructed him softly to support her head and relax. She can feel if he's tense. He didn't know how not to be tense right now. But Adrian's hand came up to cradle their daughter's head with devastating gentleness. "She's so small. She's tougher than she looks. She'd have to be." Adrian's thumb stroked across the baby's back in slow, soothing circles. With parents like us, Lena watched them together. This powerful, dangerous man holding their tiny daughter like she was made of spun glass and dreams. Something shifted in her chest, some wall she'd built beginning to crack. She said they needed to name her. Adrian's gaze lifted to meet hers. He knew. Lena hesitated. She was thinking, what was his mother's name? The question clearly caught him off guard. Elena. Why? She thought maybe if he wanted to, they could give their daughter a piece of her grandmother. Lena watched his face carefully, but only if he thought it was appropriate. She didn't want to bring up painful memories. Adrian's voice was rough. Elena Grace. If she was agreeable to Grace as a middle name after his grandmother, Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, she was agreeable. Elena Grace Vulov. Adrian tested the name, looking down at their daughter. What did she think, little one? Did that suit her? The baby, Elena, made a small sound that might have been agreement or might have been gas, and both her parents laughed. It was the first moment of genuine, uncomplicated joy they'd shared, since Lena had walked back into Adrian's life. But it couldn't last. Lena saw the shift in Adrian's expression before he spoke, the way his body tensed, his eyes going sharp and assessing as they locked on something over her shoulder. She asked what was wrong. His voice was low, dangerous. Don't turn around. But there was a man in a gray jacket by the nurse's station. He'd been watching them for the past 5 minutes. Ice slid down Lena's spine. Security? No, wrong body language. Adrian's hand moved to his phone, texting with one hand while still cradling Elena with the other. He's carrying on his left hip, and he's not trying very hard to be subtle about his surveillance. Lena's voice sharpened with fear. "Oh, Adrian, what did you do? Who would be watching us?" He didn't know, but the tension in his jaw said he had suspicions, but he was about to find out. Lena reached for his arm. Don't make a scene. Not here." Patricia appeared beside them, her expression professional, but her eyes alert. "Mr. Vulov, there's a situation at the nurse's station that requires your attention. It wasn't a request." Adrian looked at Lena, then at Elena, sleeping peacefully against his chest. He said quietly, already starting to shift the baby, for her to take her. "Adrian, take her, Lena, and stay here. Don't come out until he sent Patricia back for her." The transfer was quick and careful. And then Adrian was on his feet, his entire demeanor shifting from gentle father to something cold and lethal. He followed Patricia toward the nurse's station, and Lena watched with her heart in her throat as he approached the man in the gray jacket. The conversation was too quiet to hear, but Lena could read body language well enough. The stranger's hand moved toward his hip. Adrian's hand shot out faster, gripping the man's wrist with enough force to make him freeze. Words were exchanged, sharp, clipped, deadly. Then hospital security arrived, summoned by Patricia, or someone else monitoring the situation. The man in the gray jacket was escorted out, still protesting, and Adrian stood watching until he disappeared from view. When he returned to Lena, his expression was carved from stone. He said they needed to leave. Now. What? No, she wasn't leaving Elena. Adrian was already texting rapidly, his thumbs flying across the screen. The NICU is the safest place in this hospital. Armed guards at every entrance, cameras everywhere, strict visitor protocols. But she was vulnerable. She needed to be somewhere secure. Lena demanded to know who that man was. No one. A reporter trying to get photos for some tabloid trash. She clutched Elena closer. "You're lying." "I can tell when you're lying, Adrian." "Who was he really?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "Someone who works for people he's made angry." And before she asked, no, he didn't know which people specifically because the list was extensive. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. Oh my God, this was because of him. Someone was targeting them because of his business, his enemies. The words came out like broken glass. He knew, and he was handling it. Handling it how? By posting guards? By making them prisoners? By keeping her alive? Adrian's voice cracked with the force of his emotion before he reined it back in. He was sorry. He was sorry this was happening, and he was sorry it was his fault. But right now, he needed her to trust him. Could she do that? Lena looked down at Elena, sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware of the danger circling her family. She whispered if she had a choice. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. There's always a choice. She could walk away right now. Take Elena when she's released. Disappear the way she did before. He'd make sure she had enough money to stay hidden forever, and he'd draw every threat away from her. And him? He'd handle his enemies the way he always had. His smile was cold and sharp, permanently. That's not a solution, Adrian. That's just more violence. He pulled back, the mask sliding into place. Violence is the language my world speaks. But she didn't have to be part of that world anymore. She could choose safety for herself and Elena. Lena studied his face, seeing past the armor to the man beneath. The one who'd cradled their daughter with shaking hands, who'd promised to be better, who was offering her an escape even though it was clearly killing him. No, she said. Adrian blinked. No, she wasn't running again. Lena's grip on Elena tightened. She wasn't raising their daughter to believe that love means leaving when things get hard. She wasn't teaching her that her father is someone to fear instead of someone to trust. But, Lena, she needed him to fix this. Her voice was still wrapped in exhaustion, not with violence, not by making enemies disappear. He needed to actually fix whatever part of his business was putting Elena in danger. That could mean walking away from everything he'd built. Then walk away. Lena met his gaze steadily, because he told her Elena is who he is now. He told her everything else is just noise, so prove it. The words hung between them like a challenge. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, emotions flickering across his face too fast to name. Then he nodded, slow and deliberate. Okay, he said, he'll fix it. How? He had no idea. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, but he'll figure it out. Starting with getting her somewhere actually secure while he worked. The hotel wasn't good enough? Not anymore. Adrian was already moving, gesturing for Patricia to return. They needed to transfer her to a safe house. Somewhere with proper security, trained personnel, protocols for this kind of situation. Lena's voice was flat. She meant somewhere she couldn't leave without permission. Adrian's eyes were fierce. He meant somewhere no one could get to her or Elena without going through him first. And yes, that meant restrictions. It meant guards and cameras and feeling trapped. But it also meant alive. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be another way. Some middle ground between absolute freedom and absolute security. But Elena shifted against her chest, making a small sound in her sleep, and Lena's arguments died in her throat. She asked quietly how long. A week, maybe 2. Adrian's voice was gentle, just until he could neutralize the immediate threats and restructure his business interests to eliminate the vulnerabilities. She made it sound so simple. It's not. He reached out, his hand hovering near Elena's head before dropping. It was going to be complicated and messy, and possibly the hardest thing he'd ever done. But he meant what he said. Elena is who he is now, and he will burn down everything he built if that's what it takes to keep her safe. And her? The question slipped out before Lena could stop it. Was she part of that equation? Adrian's gaze locked on hers, intense enough to burn. She was the whole equation. She and Elena. Everything else was just variables he was trying to solve for. Lena's breath caught. Patricia cleared her throat delicately. Mr. Vulov, his security team, was here, and Dr. Chen wanted to examine Elena before they went. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Dr. Chen performed a quick but thorough examination, declaring Elena stable and progressing well. Patricia showed Lena how to pump breast milk, so Elena could continue to receive it even while Lena was away. And Adrian coordinated with a team of serious-looking men in dark suits who swept the NICU, checked exits, and spoke in clipped, efficient tones. Finally, there was nothing left to do but say goodbye. Lena kissed Elena's forehead, breathing in that sweet baby smell that was already as familiar as her own heartbeat. She promised to be back soon. Mama's not going anywhere. Elena slept on, unaware of the promises being made and broken around her. Adrian's hand found Lena's lower back, guiding her gently but inexorably toward the exit. The security team formed a loose perimeter around them, and Lena felt absurdly like a criminal being escorted from a crime scene. The safe house turned out to be a brownstone in Brooklyn, tucked away on a quiet street that looked almost aggressively normal. Inside, it was less house and more fortress. Reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, and enough security equipment to make a paranoid billionaire feel safe. Adrian said as he showed her through the space that this was temporary. Lena cut him off, too tired to hear the explanations again. She knew. Temporary. Until the threats are neutralized. Until he fixed his business. Until they could pretend to be a normal family again. Adrian's voice was quiet. They were never going to be normal. She knew that, right? I know. Lena sank onto a couch that was surprisingly comfortable, despite being in a safe house. I think I've always known. I just kept hoping that I could change. Adrian sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. He was changing, or trying to. But some parts of who he was, the enemies he'd made, the things he'd done, those couldn't be erased, only managed. Was that enough? Lena looked at him. This man she'd loved and left, and somehow ended up bound to forever. Is managing the damage enough to build a life on? The honesty in his voice was devastating. He didn't know, but it was all he had to offer right now. A promise to try to be better, to put her and Elena first, even when every instinct he had screamed to solve problems the way he always had, with violence and control, yes. No hesitation. Those were the tools he knew how to use. Learning new ones was going to take time. Lena leaned her head back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know if she was strong enough for this. Adrian's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived me, survived leaving me, survived 8 months alone and pregnant and terrified. You can survive this too. The question came out as a whisper. What if I don't want to just survive anymore? What if I want to actually live, to be happy? Adrian squeezed her hand. Then we'll figure out how to make that happen. Together, that word again. Together. Lena wanted to believe it was possible. Wanted to believe that two broken people could somehow build something whole between them. But belief required hope, and Lena's hope had been running on fumes for so long, she wasn't sure she remembered how to refill it. She said she was going to sleep now, pulling her hand from his. They could talk more tomorrow. Adrian nodded, standing. There were guards posted outside. She was safe here. Lena met his eyes. Was she? Or was she just in a different kind of cage? The question hit its mark. Adrian flinched, and for a moment Lena saw straight through to the guilt and self-loathing churning beneath his controlled exterior. He said quietly he hoped she could forgive him someday, for all of it. Then he left, and Lena was alone in a fortress built to keep danger out, and her in. She made it to the bedroom before the tears came. Hard, wrenching sobs that tore through her chest and left her gasping. She cried for Elena, so small and helpless in her isolette. She cried for herself, trapped between love and self-preservation. And she cried for Adrian, trying so hard to be someone different while still being exactly who he'd always been. When the tears finally stopped, Lena lay in the unfamiliar bed and stared at the shadows on the ceiling. Somewhere across the city, her daughter slept surrounded by machines and monitors. Somewhere else, Adrian was probably working, calling in favors, making threats, doing whatever dark things he did to bend the world to his will. And Lena was here, caught between them both, wondering if love was supposed to feel this much like drowning. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Get some rest. I'll have updates in the morning. And below it, a photo that made her breath catch. Elena wrapped in her blanket with her tiny fist pressed against her mouth, sleeping peacefully while Nurse Patricia smiled at the camera. Lena saved the photo, staring at her daughter's face until her eyes burned. She whispered to the empty room, I'm going to fix this. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure out how to give you the life you deserve. One where you don't have to choose between loving your father and being safe. One where you can just be a little girl without the weight of an empire crushing you. It was a promise made in darkness to a baby who couldn't hear it, but Lena meant every word. Tomorrow, she would start asking the hard questions. Tomorrow, she would demand real answers about Adrian's business, his enemies, and exactly what kind of danger was circling their family. Tomorrow, she would stop being passive and start taking control of her own life again. But tonight, she would sleep and dream of a future where together didn't feel like a trap. Morning came too early, announced by pale sunlight filtering through bulletproof glass and the quiet murmur of voices from somewhere downstairs. Lena woke with her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with surgical recovery and everything to do with the emotional exhaustion of the past week. She lay still for a moment, orienting herself to this new reality. Safe house, armed guards, a daughter in the NICU, and a man who was either her salvation or her doom, trying to rewrite the rules of his entire world. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Adrian, all from the early hours of the morning. No messages, just the calls themselves, like he needed to hear her voice, but couldn't bring himself to wake her. Lena was still staring at the screen when it buzzed in her hand. Adrian said without preamble that she was awake. Could hear it in her breathing, but there was no heat in the words. That's not creepy at all. Where was he? Downstairs. He'd been there since 4. He sounded exhausted. Could she come down? They needed to talk. The last time someone had told Lena they needed to talk, she'd ended up in emergency surgery. But she dragged herself out of bed anyway, splashing water on her face and pulling on clothes that were becoming familiar armor against vulnerability. Adrian was in the kitchen, surrounded by papers and looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. His hair stood in wild angles, his shirt was wrinkled, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of no sleep and too much coffee. Lena said he looked terrible. He felt worse. He gestured to a chair. Sit, please, and eat something. The guards made breakfast. A plate of eggs and toast sat waiting, still warm. Lena's stomach rebelled at the thought of food, but she forced herself to take a bite anyway. Dr. Rashid's lectures about nutrition and healing were still fresh in her mind. She said between bites, "Tell me everything. No more half-truths or protective lies. I want to know exactly what kind of danger we're in." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was searching for something. Then he pushed one of the papers toward her. This is Victor Klav. He runs the Southside operation. Gambling, protection, some light trafficking, and stolen goods. They'd had an understanding for 5 years. He stayed out of his territory, and Victor stayed out of his. Lena looked at the surveillance photo of a hard-faced man in his 50s. And 3 months ago, he discovered Victor had been skimming from their joint ventures. Not much, just enough to test if he was paying attention. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. He confronted him. Victor got defensive. Things escalated. Escalated how? He cut him out of the ventures completely. Redistributed his territory among 3 smaller operators who'd been trying to move up. Effectively, he destroyed his power base in a single night. Lena set down her fork, and now he wants revenge. Now he wants blood. Adrian pushed another photo toward her. This one of the man from the hospital. The one in the gray jacket. That's Alexei Petro, one of Victor's enforcers. He was at the hospital to send a message, to let him know that Victor knows about her and Elena. A chill slid down Lena's spine. What kind of message? The kind that says he can get to you anytime he wants. That no amount of security will keep you safe if he decides to strike. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. It's psychological warfare. He wants me scared, desperate, making mistakes. Is it working? Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. He hadn't been this terrified since the night she left, and he thought he'd lost her forever. The idea that someone might hurt her or Elena because of him. His voice cracked. He couldn't think straight, couldn't strategize. All he could do was put guards around her and pray it was enough. Lena had never seen Adrian this raw, this vulnerable. The man who commanded empires with a word was coming apart at the seams, and it was both terrifying and oddly humanizing. She asked quietly what their options were. 3. Adrian started ticking them off on his fingers. 1. He goes to war with Victor, brings every resource he has to bear, destroys him and everyone loyal to him. It's what he would have done 6 months ago. Quick, brutal, effective. But war means casualties, collateral damage, and she and Elena were perfect targets for anyone looking to hurt him. He met her gaze. He couldn't protect her if he was busy fighting on multiple fronts. Option 2, negotiate. Find out what Victor wants. Money, territory, an apology, and give it to him. Buy peace. He didn't sound convinced that would work, because it wouldn't. Adrian was bitter. He humiliated him, took everything he'd built, and handed it to his rivals. Money won't fix that. Only blood will. Lena's hands trembled as she picked up her coffee cup. And option 3, the words fell like stones. I walk away from all of it. The business, the territory, the power. I liquidate everything I can. Set up trusts for the people who've been loyal to me and disappear. Take you and Elena somewhere Victor can't reach us. Somewhere we can start over completely. The silence that followed was deafening. Lena stared at Adrian, searching his face for any hint of deception or manipulation. But all she saw was exhausted sincerity. A man who'd spent all night trying to find a solution that didn't end with the people he loved in danger. She whispered if he'd actually do that. Give up everything he'd built for her and Elena. Yes. No hesitation. I told you, you're the equation now. Everything else is just variables. His empire, his reputation, everything he'd worked for meant nothing if they weren't safe. Adrian reached across the table, his hand covering hers. He'd spent his entire adult life building power because he never wanted to be helpless again. Never wanted to be the scared kid watching his mother get dragged away, unable to stop it. But the thing about power is that it makes you a target, and he wouldn't let her and Elena pay the price for his ambition. Lena felt tears burning in her eyes. Walking away won't make you happy. Adrian's grip tightened on her hand. Being with you and Elena will make me happy. Everything else is negotiable. I mean it, Lena. He'd already started making calls. Henderson was drawing up the paperwork to transfer his legitimate businesses into a blind trust. His other holdings, the ones that operated in gray areas, he was selling them off to people who could handle the heat. Within a month, he'd be completely out. Lena's voice was faint. A month? You can't dismantle an empire in a month. There was steel beneath the exhaustion. Watch me. I'm done with half measures. Done trying to have it both ways. I choose you. I choose Elena. And I choose a life where I don't have to sleep with one eye open, waiting for enemies to strike. Lena pulled her hand away, standing abruptly despite the protest of healing muscles. She paced to the window, staring out at the quiet Brooklyn street that could have been anywhere. It could have been normal if not for the armed guard she could just barely see in her peripheral vision. She asked, what if she didn't want him to give it all up? Adrian went very still. What if she didn't want to be the reason he tore down everything he was? Lena turned to face him. What if she couldn't live with that kind of sacrifice? Knowing that he gave up his entire identity for her? It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. It's the same thing. Lena's voice was raw, and it puts all the weight on me. If we fail, if this doesn't work, if we can't make a life together after all, then you'll have given up everything for nothing. We won't fail. You can't know that. Lena crossed her arms, trying to hold herself together. You can't guarantee that love will be enough, that we won't destroy each other anyway, just in different ways. Adrian stood, moving toward her with careful steps, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Then what did she want him to do? Stay in the business? Keep putting her in danger? The words burst out of her. I want you to find a middle ground. I want you to be smart about this, instead of making grand gestures that might feel good in the moment, but leave you bitter and resentful 10 years from now. There is no middle ground with Victor. Either I fight or I run. Those are the only options. Then fight smarter. Lena met his gaze steadily. He said Victor wants blood because he humiliated him, so stop humiliating him. Give him back his dignity along with a way out that doesn't end with all of us dead. Adrian stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. She wanted him to apologize to the man who sent someone to threaten their daughter. She wanted him to outthink him instead of outmuscle him. Lena moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. You're the smartest person I know, Adrian. When you're not operating from fear or anger, you can see solutions no one else can. So, stop being scared for 5 minutes and start being strategic. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. The businessman reasserting itself over the terrified father. What was she suggesting? I'm suggesting you find out what Victor actually wants. Not what you think he wants, but what he really needs to feel whole again. Lena's mind was racing now, piecing together fragments of conversations she'd overheard during her marriage. Business principles Adrian had explained during quiet dinners. You took his territory and gave it to rivals. That's a problem of power and respect. So give him different power, different respect. Something he values more than revenge. Adrian's eyes sharpened. You're thinking partnership. I'm thinking you find a way to make him more valuable as an ally than as an enemy. You're good at that. You've done it dozens of times with other rivals. Those rivals hadn't threatened my family. No, but they'd done other things you considered unforgivable, and you still found ways to work with them when it served both your interests. Lena could see the wheels turning in Adrian's head, the fear slowly being replaced by calculation. What does Victor have that you need? What leverage points exist that you haven't been willing to use because you were too angry to see them? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant as he worked through possibilities. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful instead of desperate. Victor has connections in Eastern Europe that I've been trying to establish for years. Supply chains, distribution networks, political contacts. I've been building my own from scratch, but it's slow and expensive. And if you partnered with him instead? Adrian's tone was clinical now. All business. I'd have instant access to markets worth hundreds of millions. But that means trusting him, working closely with someone who just threatened you and Elena. Lena pressed her advantage. It means making him invested in our survival. If his fortune is tied to yours, if hurting us means hurting himself, then we're safer than we'd ever be behind walls and guards. It's a risk. Everything is a risk. Lena reached up, her hand cupping his face. But this risk lets you keep your empire and keep us safe. It lets you be who you are without sacrificing everything for who you think I need you to be. Adrian's hand covered hers, holding it against his cheek. When did you get so ruthless? A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I learned from the best. You taught me that survival isn't about running from danger. It's about making danger work for you. I taught you too well. Maybe. Lena's smile faded. But I'm tired of running, Adrian. And I'm tired of watching you tear yourself apart, trying to be something you're not. So let's try being smart instead of safe, strategic instead of scared. Adrian pulled her closer, careful of her healing incision, until her forehead rested against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, fast and strong, and feel the tension slowly draining from his body. He murmured against her hair that this could backfire spectacularly. Lena's arms came up around his waist. Then we'll deal with it together. But at least we'll be dealing with it as partners, instead of as a man trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I do want to save you. I know. Lena pulled back enough to look up at him. But I don't need saving. I need an equal. Someone who respects me enough to include me in the decisions that affect our lives. Even the dangerous ones. Lena's voice was firm, especially the dangerous ones. I'm not going to be the delicate flower you keep in a gilded cage while you handle all the scary parts of life. If we're doing this, really doing this, then I need to understand your world, all of it, including the parts you've been hiding from me. Adrian searched her face for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow and deliberate. Okay, he said, no more hiding. No more protecting you from ugly truths. We do this together, as equals. Lena agreed. Together. Adrian's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen, and his expression tightened. It's Henderson. He's arranged a meeting with Victor for this afternoon. That was fast. Adrian had the grace to look slightly guilty. I may have already started making overtures while you were asleep. I was preparing for option 2 before I was fully committed to it. Lena shook her head, but there was fondness in it, always planning 3 moves ahead. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. We just agreed. Adrian's voice was firm. We just agreed to be partners and equals, which means I get to tell you when something is genuinely too dangerous. Meeting with Victor is a delicate negotiation that could go sideways in a heartbeat. I need to be focused on him, not worried about keeping you safe if things turn violent. So, you admit it might turn violent? Everything might turn violent in my world. That's why I'm trying to get out of it. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. Trust me to handle this. Please let me do this one thing without you watching, and I swear I'll tell you everything that happens the moment I get back. Lena wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed that letting Adrian walk into danger alone was a mistake, that she should be there to make sure he didn't revert to old patterns when challenged. But she could also see the fear beneath his determination. Not fear of Victor, but fear of failing her again, of making the wrong choice and watching everything crumble. Fine, she said finally, but you call me the moment it's done, and if you're not back by 6, I'm coming to find you. Deal. Adrian pressed a kiss to her forehead. Thank you for trusting me. Lena corrected him. I'm trusting you to be smart, not safe. There's a difference. I know. He pulled back, already shifting into the persona he wore for business. Confident, calculating, dangerous. I'll have additional guards posted here while I'm gone. And Lena? Yes. If anything happens, if anyone tries to get to you, you run. Don't try to be brave or strategic. Just run and call me. Adrian, promise me. His eyes were fierce. Promise me you'll put Elena first, even if it means leaving me behind. The request hung between them, heavy with implications. I promise, Lena whispered. Adrian kissed her then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to pour every unspoken emotion into that single point of contact. When he pulled away, they were both breathing hard. I'll be back by 6, he said. And when I am, we're going to visit Elena together and tell her about the future we're building for her. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with armed guards and the weight of promises made in desperation. The hours that followed were the longest of Lena's life. She tried to rest, to watch television, to do anything that would make time move faster. But her mind kept circling back to Adrian, walking into a meeting with a man who wanted him dead, armed with nothing but words and the hope that strategy would triumph over vengeance. At 4, her phone rang. The hospital. Miss Carter. Nurse Patricia's voice was warm but professional. I wanted to update you on Elena. She's being moved to an open crib today. No more isolette. Relief flooded through Lena. That's wonderful. It is. And it means you can hold her more easily, feed her without quite so many wires in the way. We were hoping you might come in this evening for her 6 o'clock feeding. I'll be there. Lena was already moving, grabbing her coat. Tell her mom is on her way. She found the head of her security detail, a woman named Marcus, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, and explained she needed to get to the hospital. Marcus said carefully that Mr. Volov said she should stay here until he returns. Lena's voice was firm. Mr. Volov isn't here to make that call. My daughter is being moved to an open crib for the first time, and I'm going to be there for her 6 o'clock feeding. You can come with me and keep me safe, or I can call a taxi and go alone. Your choice. Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. We go together, but we follow my security protocols. Understood? Understood. The drive to the hospital was tense. Marcus constantly scanned for threats while Lena tried to contain her excitement about seeing Elena. An open crib meant her daughter was getting stronger, healing, becoming less fragile and more real with every passing day. The NICU was quiet when they arrived, the evening shift just starting their rounds. Lena scrubbed in with practiced efficiency, and her breath caught when she saw Elena for the first time without the isolette walls between them. Lena reached in, lifting her daughter with careful hands. Hi, baby girl. Elena was still tiny, still attached to monitors, but she felt more solid somehow, more present. Mama's here. Elena's eyes opened, unfocused, but aware, and Lena felt her heart crack open all over again. She murmured, settling into the rocking chair with Elena cradled against her chest. You're getting so strong, so brave and fierce, just like your daddy. Patricia appeared with a bottle, smiling. She's been asking for you. Well, not asking exactly. But she's been fussy all afternoon, like she knew something big was happening. Lena took the bottle, positioning it carefully. Elena latched on with surprising vigor, her tiny hands coming up to grasp Lena's finger. Lena whispered, That's my girl. You eat and grow strong, And when you're ready, we're going to take you home. Your daddy's working on making sure home is safe for you. And Mama's going to make sure it's full of love. She was so focused on Elena that she didn't hear the commotion at the NICU entrance until it was too late. Raised voices, the sound of a struggle. Then Marcus's voice, sharp and commanding. "Sir, you can't go in there without." The double doors burst open. Victor Clove stood in the entrance, flanked by two men who looked like they ate broken glass for breakfast. He was older than his surveillance photo, his face lined with years of violence and calculation, but his eyes were sharp as he scanned the NICU, landing on Lena with predatory focus. "Miss Carter." His accent was thick Eastern European. "We need to talk." Lena's arms tightened protectively around Elena, her heart suddenly thundering. "Get out. This is a hospital. You can't." Victor moved further into the room, his men spreading out to block the exits. "I can do whatever I want. And right now, I want to make sure you understand what's at stake in the negotiation happening between your lover and me." "He's not my lover."
Ever.
"He's my." Lena stopped, unsure what word to use. Husband felt wrong. Partner felt inadequate. "It doesn't matter what he is. You need to leave before I call security." Victor's smile was cold. "Security is currently detained." "Don't worry, no one's hurt. Just delayed long enough for us to have a conversation." Patricia moved between Victor and Lena, her expression fierce, despite the fear Lena could see in her eyes. "This is a neonatal intensive care unit. These babies are fighting for their lives. Whatever business you have, take it somewhere else." Victor's gaze never left Lena. "The business concerns this baby specifically. And her mother, who I'm told has quite the influence over Adrian Volkov's decision-making lately." Patricia already had her phone out. "I'm calling the police." Victor shrugged. "Go ahead. But by the time they arrived, this conversation will be over one way or another." Lena's mind raced, trying to process what was happening. Adrian was supposed to be meeting with Victor. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said slowly. "Unless the meeting was a trap. You never intended to negotiate. You just wanted Adrian distracted so you could get to me." Victor's smile widened. "Very good. I can see why he values you. You're clever. What do you want?" "I want Adrian Volkov to understand that his money and power mean nothing when it comes to protecting the people he loves." Victor took another step closer, and one of his men moved to intercept Patricia's phone call, plucking the device from her hand with casual cruelty. "I want him to feel helpless, desperate, the way I felt when he destroyed everything I built." Lena's voice was steady despite the terror racing through her veins. "So this is just revenge. You're not here to negotiate or make deals. You're here to hurt me, to hurt him." Victor's expression shifted, becoming almost regretful. "Oh, I'm not going to hurt you. That would be too quick, too clean. No, I'm simply going to take your daughter and disappear. Raise her as my own. Let Adrian spend the rest of his life knowing she's out there somewhere, but never being able to find her." The world stopped. Lena stared at Victor, her arms instinctively tightening around Elena until the baby made a small sound of protest. "You're insane," she whispered. Victor gestured to one of his men. "I'm efficient. Take the child." Everything happened at once. Patricia lunged for the emergency alarm, her hand slamming down on the red button that would flood the NICU with security. Marcus burst through the doors, weapon drawn, shouting commands, and Lena moved on pure instinct, turning her body to shield Elena while her mind screamed that this couldn't be happening, couldn't be real. The man Victor had gestured to reached for Elena, and Adrian Volkov appeared out of nowhere. His fist connected with the man's jaw with enough force to send him crashing into a bank of monitors. His voice was devoid of all emotion. "Touch my daughter, and I will make you pray for death." Victor spun, and for the first time, Lena saw genuine surprise on his face. "How did you?" Adrian moved to stand between Victor and Lena, his body a wall of controlled fury. "You think I'd walk into a meeting with you without insurance? I had 3 teams tracking every person in your organization. The moment your men moved on the hospital, I knew." Victor's composure was returning. "Then you know you're outnumbered. My people are everywhere. You can't protect them all." Adrian's hand moved to his pocket, withdrawing his phone. "I don't have to. I just have to make one call, and every asset you have, every account, every property, every loyalty you've bought disappears. I've spent the last 3 hours putting the pieces in place. All I need is a reason. You're bluffing." Adrian's smile was terrible to behold. "Am I? Try me. Reach for my daughter one more time, and I'll show you exactly how ruthless I can be when someone threatens my family." The standoff stretched, tension coiling tighter with every heartbeat. Then hospital security flooded in, weapons drawn, and Victor's men found themselves surrounded. Victor himself stood frozen, calculating odds, and finding them suddenly insurmountable. He said quietly, "This isn't over." Adrian's voice was like ice. "Yes, it is. Because I'm about to give you a choice. Victor, walk away now, tonight and live. Stay in this city, keep coming after my family, and I will erase you so thoroughly that no one will remember you ever existed. You can't. I can, and I will." Adrian's gaze was merciless. Or, and here's where it gets interesting. "You can accept the partnership I was going to offer you before you decided to be stupid. Full access to my Eastern European operations, 50-50 profit split, and enough legitimate business to make you richer than revenge ever could." Victor's eyes narrowed. "In exchange for what?" "You leave my family alone forever. You become the kind of partner I can trust, or you become a cautionary tale. Your choice." Lena watched Victor's face as he processed the offer. She could see the wheels turning, ambition warring with pride, the slow realization that Adrian was offering him a way to save face while getting everything he actually wanted. Victor said slowly, 50-50, "and I maintain control of my current operations. Within reason. We negotiate the details tomorrow. Tonight, you leave." And Adrian's voice dropped to something deadly. "You never come near my wife or daughter again." The word wife hung in the air, a claim Adrian had no right to make, but that Lena found she didn't want to dispute. Victor looked at Lena, at Elena sleeping peacefully in her arms despite the chaos, then back at Adrian. "Deal," he said finally. "But Vulov, if you go back on your word, if you try to screw me again, partnership or not, I will burn your world down." "Fair enough." Adrian's posture didn't relax. "Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about letting you live." Victor left, his men following, and suddenly the NICU was full of security and police and hospital administrators demanding explanations. Through it all, Adrian stood beside Lena and Elena, a solid presence that made Lena's hands finally stop shaking. She said quietly once the immediate chaos had died down, "You called me your wife." Adrian looked down at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly undid her. "I know. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I didn't say I minded." Lena met his gaze steadily, "Just that you said it." Understanding dawned in Adrian's expression, followed by something that looked like hope. "Lena," she interrupted. "Take us home, all three of us. I want to get Elena out of here, away from all this. I want to go somewhere safe and figure out what comes next. Elena can't leave for another week at least. Then we stay with her, here or wherever Dr. Rashid says is best, but together. No more separate lives, no more avoiding each other. If we're doing this, we do it right." Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Are we doing this? Really?" Lena thought about all the reasons to say no, about the danger and the control, and the fact that loving Adrian Volkov would never be simple or safe. Then she looked down at Elena, sleeping peacefully against her chest, and thought about the man who'd moved heaven and earth to protect them both, who'd offered his greatest enemy a fortune to keep them safe, who was trying, however imperfectly, to be better than he'd been. "Yes," she said. "We're really doing this." Adrian kissed her then, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. And for the first time since Lena had walked back into his life, she let herself believe they might actually survive each other. The next 10 days existed in a strange bubble outside normal time. Adrian moved into the suite at the Carlisle, taking the second bedroom and treating the shared space with the careful courtesy of a man walking on eggshells. They fell into a rhythm born of necessity and Elena's demanding schedule. Early morning visits to the NICU before Adrian disappeared to handle business. Afternoon feedings where they took turns holding their daughter. Evenings spent in quiet conversation that slowly began to chip away at the walls between them. Lena watched him transform in small, incremental ways. The sharp edges of Adrian Vulov, feared power broker, began to soften into something more human. He learned to change diapers with fumbling determination, to warm bottles to the exact temperature Elena preferred, to hold her against his chest during the long nights when she was fussy and needed the steady rhythm of a heartbeat to calm her. Lena observed one evening, watching Adrian pace the NICU with Elena tucked against his shoulder. "You're getting good at this," Adrian admitted, his voice low so as not to wake the other babies, that he's terrified every second that he's going to break her. "She's so small, Lena. Every time I pick her up, I'm convinced this will be the time I do something wrong. That's called being a parent." Lena moved to stand beside him, her hand coming to rest on Elena's back. "The fear never goes away. You just learn to work around it." Adrian's eyes were full of wonder and exhaustion in equal measure.
How are you so calm about all this?
You're healing from surgery, dealing with everything I put you through, and somehow you make motherhood look effortless. Lena's laugh was tired, but genuine. It's not effortless. I cry in the shower at least once a day. I panic every time her monitor beeps, and I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just better at hiding it than you are. I don't believe that. Believe it. Lena leaned her head against his arm, too tired to maintain the distance she'd been trying to keep. We're both making this up as we go. The only difference is you're used to being an expert at everything, and I'm used to fumbling through life, hoping it works out. Adrian was quiet for a moment, adjusting his hold on Elena with the kind of careful attention he usually reserved for multi-million-dollar negotiations. He said finally that the partnership with Victor was finalized. Henderson and his lawyers spent the last week going through every clause, every contingency. It's airtight, and you trust him to honor it? Adrian's voice held a note of grim satisfaction. I trust that he values money more than revenge, and this partnership will make him wealthier than he's ever been. He also knows that the moment he breaks our agreement, I have enough leverage to destroy him 3 times over. Mutually assured destruction makes for reliable peace. That's a very Adrian way of looking at the world. It's the only way I know. He glanced down at her. Are you disappointed? In what? That I didn't walk away completely? That I'm still Adrian Vulov, still playing power games and making deals with dangerous men? Lena considered the question carefully. 2 weeks ago, she might have said yes. Might have wanted him to be someone completely different, someone safe and simple who lived a life with no shadows. But watching him hold their daughter with such desperate tenderness, seeing him try so hard to be both the man he was and the father Elena needed, Lena had realized something fundamental. She didn't want Adrian to stop being himself. She just wanted him to choose them first. No, she said quietly. I'm not disappointed. You found a solution that keeps us safe without destroying who you are. That's what I asked for. You asked for partnership, for equality, and you're giving it to me. Lena pulled back enough to look up at him. You could have made that deal with Victor without consulting me. Could have handled everything behind my back the way you used to. But you didn't. You told me what you were planning, listened when I had suggestions, and made me part of the process. That's what matters. Adrian's expression was unreadable in the soft light of the NICU. He said he was going to mess this up. At some point, he was going to revert to old habits, try to control things, make decisions without her, push too hard because he was scared of losing her. I know, and when that happens, I'll call you on it. Lena's voice was firm. I'll remind you that we're partners, and I'll expect you to do better. But I'm not going to run the first time you make a mistake. Adrian, I did that once. I'm not doing it again. The question came out raw. Why not? After everything I've put you through, why are you willing to stay? Lena looked down at Elena, sleeping peacefully against Adrian's chest, her tiny hand fisted in his shirt, because she deserves to know her father, and because I think, she paused, gathering courage. I think maybe I never stopped loving you. I just got really good at pretending I didn't. Adrian's breath caught. Lena, don't. She held up a hand. Don't say anything right now. We're both exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear and hope. Let's just take it one day at a time, like we agreed. Adrian echoed, one day at a time. Then softer. But for the record, I never stopped loving you either. Not for a single moment of the 8 months you were gone. The confession hung between them, vulnerable and terrifying, and achingly honest. Before Lena could respond, Dr. Chen appeared with her usual brisk efficiency. Good news, she announced, checking Elena's chart. This young lady has been maintaining her temperature perfectly, taking all her feedings, and her weight is up another 2 ounces. I think we can start talk another about discharge. Lena's heart leaped. Really? When? Dr. Chen smiled at their obvious joy. If she continues progressing at this rate, maybe 3 more days. Of course, she'll need to pass her car seat test, and you'll need to complete infant CPR training, and we'll want to make sure you have all the equipment you need at home. Adrian's voice was absolute. We'll have everything, whatever she needs, whatever makes her safe. Cost is no object. Dr. Chen's smile turned knowing. I figured you'd say that, Mr. Vulov. I'll have the discharge coordinator reach out tomorrow to go over the checklist. She left, and Lena and Adrian stared at each other with matching expressions of terror and elation. Lena whispered, 3 days? We're taking her home in 3 days. Adrian's practicality reasserted itself. We don't have a home. The suite at the Carlisle isn't suitable for long-term living with an infant. We need somewhere permanent. I still have my apartment in Queens. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. The fourth floor walk-up with no heat. Lena, I'm not trying to control you, but that's not safe for Elena or for you while you're still healing. So, what are you suggesting? Adrian was quiet for a moment, still swaying gently with Elena. Move in with me, not as a trap or a cage, but as a practical solution to a practical problem. The penthouse has more than enough room, round-the-clock security, and everything Elena could possibly need. You'd have your own space, your own life. He struggled for words. I just want to be there, to wake up under the same roof as both of you, to not miss a single moment of her growing up. Lena's voice was barely audible. And us? What happens with us if I move in? Adrian met her gaze steadily. Whatever you want to happen. If you want separate bedrooms and a co-parenting arrangement, I can live with that. If you want to try again, really try. As equals, I'm ready for that, too. And if you need time to figure out which one you want, I'll wait. I'm good at waiting when it matters. Lena thought about the penthouse she'd fled 8 months ago, the place that had felt like a beautiful prison. But she also thought about how she'd changed since then, how she'd learned to stand up for herself and demand the respect she deserved. Moving back didn't have to mean surrendering. It could mean choosing to build something new in a familiar space. Okay, she said, we'll try it, but I want it in writing. My own space, my own decisions about work and life and everything else. You don't get to make me a prisoner just because we're under the same roof. Done. Adrian didn't hesitate. Henderson can draw up whatever agreements make you feel safe. I'll sign anything you want, even if it includes clauses about respecting boundaries and consulting me before making major decisions, especially those. A small smile touched Adrian's lips. You were right, back at the safe house. I'm smarter when I'm not operating from fear, and the smartest thing I can do is trust you to be my partner in all of this. Good answer. Lena allowed herself a smile. Now, give me our daughter. You've been hogging her for the past hour. The transfer was practiced now, both of them working in concert to shift Elena from Adrian's chest to Lena's without waking her. The baby made a small sound of protest but settled quickly, her warm weight against Lena's heart, a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Henderson appeared with contracts that gave Lena ironclad protections, her own wing of the penthouse, financial independence through a trust Adrian couldn't touch, and legal language that made it clear she could leave at any time without penalty. Adrian signed without reading them, trusting Lena's judgment in a way that felt almost reckless. The penthouse itself was transformed. The cold, masculine space, Lena remembered, had been softened by a nursery that looked like it belonged in a magazine. All gentle colors and carefully curated furniture that was both beautiful and functional. But more than that, Adrian had made space for her everywhere. Her favorite books on the shelves, her photos on the walls, her preferences built into every decision. Lena asked, walking through the transformed space with wonder, how he did all this in 3 days. Adrian looked almost embarrassed. I had help. I hired a designer who specializes in making spaces feel like home instead of showrooms, told her about you, your tastes, your needs, what makes you comfortable. She did the rest. You hired someone to make me feel at home. Adrian's hand found hers. I hired someone to make sure this place felt like ours instead of mine, because that's what it is now, ours. Yours and mine and Elena's. Lena looked around at the evidence of his effort. The comfortable reading nook by the windows, the kitchen stocked with her favorite foods, the art on the walls that reflected her aesthetic instead of his. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what she would have chosen if left to her own devices, but it was thoughtful in a way that made her chest ache. Thank you, she said quietly. Adrian's voice held a note of nervousness. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we've lived here for a month. And you're sick of me hovering. I'm already sick of you hovering. Then this should be familiar territory. They brought Elena home on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks and 2 days after her dramatic entrance into the world. The car ride from the hospital was tense. Both Adrian and Lena were hyper-aware of the precious cargo in the back seat. Adrian drove 10 miles below the speed limit, taking turns with exaggerated care. And Lena kept twisting around to check on Elena every 30 seconds. Adrian said for the 5th time, "She's fine, I know. I just need to see her. She's literally 3 feet behind you. She hasn't moved since we strapped her in. I know I'm being irrational." Adrian's hand found hers across the console. "You're being a mother. It's allowed. The penthouse felt different with Elena in it. Suddenly, the massive space seemed both too big and too small. Too big for a tiny baby to get lost in, too small to contain the overwhelming love and fear that came with her. They settled into a routine almost immediately, driven by Elena's demanding schedule. Feedings every 3 hours, diaper changes that felt constant, and the particular brand of exhaustion that came from never sleeping more than 90 minutes at a stretch. Adrian insisted on taking the night shift. When Lena protested, he argued that she was still healing. She needed actual sleep, not 20-minute naps between feedings, and you need to run an empire. You can't do that on no sleep. Watch me. So, they compromised. Lena took the early evening feedings. Adrian handled midnight to 6, and they both stumbled through the day in a fog of caffeine and determination. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was the happiest Lena had been in years. 2 weeks after bringing Elena home, Lena woke at 3 in the morning and realized the penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. She shot out of bed, panic clawing through her chest, and ran for the nursery. The sight that greeted her made her stop in the doorway. Adrian sat in the rocking chair with Elena against his bare chest, both of them asleep. His head was tilted back, mouth slightly open, looking more relaxed than Lena had ever seen him. Elena was sprawled across his torso like a tiny, perfect starfish, her rosebud mouth making small, sucking motions in her sleep. Lena's heart cracked open. This was the man she'd run from, the one who'd scared her with his intensity and his need for control. But it was also the man who woke up 3 times a night to feed their daughter, who sang off-key lullabies when she was fussy, who looked at Elena like she'd hung the moon and stars. People could change. Adrian was living proof. Adrian's voice was rough with sleep, but his eyes were open and full of gentle amusement. Are you just going to stand there staring, or are you going to help me up without waking her? How long have you been awake? Long enough to feel you watching us. He shifted carefully, protecting Elena's head with one large hand. She fought sleep for an hour, so I gave up on the crib and just held her. You're gonna spoil her. Adrian's smile was soft. Good. She deserves to be spoiled, to grow up knowing she's loved and wanted and protected. Lena moved into the room, perching on the ottoman beside the rocking chair. We should talk about the future. Real plans, not just day-to-day survival. Okay. Adrian's free hand found hers. What are you thinking? The words came out in a rush. I want to go back to school. I never finished my degree, and I want Elena to grow up seeing her mother work for things, accomplish goals, be more than just someone's wife or someone's mother. What do you want to study? Lena watched his face carefully for signs of dismissal or condescension. Social work, maybe, or early childhood education. Something that helps people. I know it's not glamorous, and it won't make the kind of money you're used to. Adrian's voice was firm. It's perfect. You'd be incredible at it. And Elena would be lucky to have a mother who teaches her that success isn't measured in money. You mean that? Every word. He squeezed her hand. I'll support you however you need. Tuition, childcare, whatever it takes. This is your dream. I'm not going to stand in the way of it. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Adrian's gaze was steady. But don't thank me for doing what any decent partner would do. I meant what I said, Lena. We're equals in this. Your dreams matter just as much as mine. What about your dreams? Lena asked. What does Adrian Volkov want for the future? Adrian looked down at Elena, his expression contemplating. Honestly, I want this. I want to wake up at 3 in the morning holding my daughter. I want to watch her grow up, teach her things. Embarrass her when she's a teenager by being an overprotective dad. I want to build something with you that's real and honest and nothing like the empire I spent years creating.
You're not giving up your business, though.
Adrian's voice was thoughtful. No, but I'm reshaping it. The partnership with Victor is just the start. I'm moving everything toward legitimate operations. Real estate development, tech investments, venture capital. Things I can be proud to tell Elena about when she's old enough to ask what her father does. That's a big change. Adrian met her gaze. It's necessary. I don't want to be the kind of father who operates in shadows. I want to be someone she can look up to. Someone she's proud to introduce to her friends. She's 3 weeks old. You have time before friend introductions become an issue. I know, but I want to be ready when they do. Adrian shifted Elena slightly, making sure she was comfortable. I'm trying to be better, Lena, every day. Not perfect. I know I'll never be perfect, but better than I was yesterday. Lena leaned forward, pressing a kiss to his forehead. You're already better than you think you are. The question came out vulnerable. Am I better enough? Better enough for you to want this permanently? Lena's breath caught. Adrian, I'm not asking you to marry me again. I know we're not ready for that. Adrian's eyes were fierce with emotion. But I'm asking if you can see a future with me. A real one. Not just co-parenting, but actually building a life together.
I see it.
Lena whispered. I've been seeing it for weeks now. Every time you get up in the middle of the night with her. Every time you ask my opinion before making a decision. Every time you choose us over everything else. Adrian's voice cracked. Then stay. Not because you're scared or trapped or because it's convenient. Stay because you want to. Because you love me the way I love you. Because you believe we can make this work. Lena looked at him. This complicated, dangerous, achingly tender man who was trying so hard to be worthy of the second chance she'd given him. She thought about all the reasons to say no, all the ways this could still go wrong. But she also thought about Elena sleeping peacefully between them, the family they'd created despite everything. I'm staying, she said. I'm staying because I love you, because I want to build a life with you, and because I think. Her voice broke. I think maybe we're going to be okay. Adrian's eyes shone with unshed tears. Yeah. Lena smiled through her own tears. Yeah. We're going to fight sometimes. You're going to slip back into old habits, and I'm going to call you on it. We're going to have hard days and moments where we're not sure we can do this, but we're going to be okay. The words fell from Adrian's lips like a prayer. I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too. Lena leaned in, capturing his lips in a kiss that tasted of hope and promise and new beginnings. Now, let me take our daughter so you can get some actual sleep. I'm fine. You're exhausted and I'm awake anyway. Lena reached for Elena, lifting her carefully. Go to bed. Adrian. Real bed, not the rocking chair. Adrian stood, stretching muscles that had clearly cramped from sitting so long in one position. But before he left the nursery, he pulled Lena close, pressing a kiss to her forehead and then to Elena's. My girls, he murmured. Both of you mine, Lena corrected gently. Ours. We belong to each other. Ours, Adrian agreed. The months that followed were a journey of constant adjustment and discovery. Lena enrolled in online classes, studying during Elena's naps, and late into the night after Adrian took over baby duty. Adrian systematically restructured his business empire, cutting ties with anything that operated in moral gray areas and investing in ventures he could be proud of. They fought sometimes, sharp, honest arguments about boundaries and expectations that they learned to navigate without running. Elena grew. 1 month became 2, then 3, then 6. She smiled for the first time on a Tuesday morning, laughed on a Friday afternoon, and rolled over on a Sunday evening while both her parents watched with ridiculous pride. The Victor partnership proved more successful than either Adrian or Lena had anticipated. The Eastern European ventures flourished, and Victor himself began to transform from a dangerous enemy to a grudging ally, to something that almost resembled friendship. Lena observed one afternoon, watching the older man attempt to interact with 6-month-old Elena with all the grace of a bull in a china shop. Never thought I'd see the day Victor Kolov would bring baby gifts. Adrian smiled, watching his daughter gum Victor's finger with determined concentration. She has that effect on people. Transforms hardened criminals into doting uncles. She's going to be so spoiled. Adrian pulled Lena against his side. Good. She should be spoiled, loved, given every opportunity we never had. Lena leaned into him, marveling at how natural this felt now, how the man she'd once feared had become her partner in the truest sense. They'd rebuilt their relationship from the ground up, establishing new patterns based on trust and communications instead of control and fear. It wasn't perfect. Adrian still had moments where his instinct was to solve problems by throwing money or power at them. Lena still had moments where she wanted to run instead of staying to fight through difficulties. But they were learning, growing, becoming the people their daughter deserved them to be. 1 year after Elena's birth, Lena graduated with her associate's degree in early childhood education. Adrian threw a party that was simultaneously too lavish and perfectly thoughtful, inviting everyone who'd supported her journey. Classmates, professors, and even Dr. Rashid and the NICU staff who'd helped save Elena's life. Adrian said that night after the guests had left and Elena was asleep in her crib, I'm proud of you. Not just for graduating, though that's incredible, but for everything. For being strong enough to leave when you needed to, for being brave enough to come back, for giving me a chance to be better. Lena corrected him. You gave yourself that chance. I just made space for it. We make a good team. The best. Lena smiled up at him. Though I should probably tell you, I got accepted to a bachelor's program at Columbia. Full scholarship. Adrian's eyes widened. Lena, that's amazing. When did you apply? 3 months ago. I wanted to make sure I got in before I told you, in case. She hesitated. Adrian's voice was understanding instead of hurt. In case I tried to control it somehow. I'm glad you protected yourself, and I'm glad you trusted me enough to tell me now. I'll need childcare help. The program is intense. Done. Whatever you need. Adrian pulled her close. We'll figure it out together. Together, Lena agreed, letting herself sink into his embrace. It was another year before Adrian asked her to marry him again. They were in the mountains, having driven 3 hours north to a cabin Adrian had purchased, specifically because Lena had mentioned once that she'd always wanted to see the leaves change in autumn. Elena was napping in her travel crib, and they were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over trees that blazed with color. I have something for you, Adrian said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's heart stuttered. Adrian, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is, but not the way you're expecting. He opened the box to reveal 2 rings, one a delicate band of gold, the other larger and masculine. I know we're technically still married. The divorce never finalized because of everything that happened with Elena, but I want to do this right. I want to ask you, as equals, if you'll choose me again. Not because you're trapped or scared or because we have a daughter together, but because you want to build a life with me. Lena stared at the rings, tears already forming. Is this a proposal? It's a renewal, a fresh start. Adrian took her hand. Lena Carter, will you marry me again? Will you take me as your partner, your equal, the man who will spend the rest of his life trying to deserve you? Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, you ridiculous man. I'll marry you again. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, and Lena did the same for him, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. They remarried quietly 2 months later, with only Elena and a handful of close friends as witnesses. No elaborate ceremony, no society photographers. Just 2 people who'd found their way back to each other, choosing to make it permanent. The years that followed were full of the ordinary chaos of life. Lena earned her bachelor's degree, then her master's, eventually becoming a child advocate who worked with families in crisis. Adrian continued reshaping his empire into something legitimate and ethical, mentoring young entrepreneurs and investing in social enterprises that aligned with Lena's values. Elena grew into a bright, fierce little girl who had her mother's stubborn determination and her father's strategic mind. She kept both her parents on their toes, challenging them and loving them in equal measure. Lena observed one evening, watching 5-year-old Elena negotiate with Adrian about bedtime, with all the skill of a seasoned diplomat. She's going to rule the world someday. Adrian's voice was full of pride. Of course she is. She's our daughter. World domination is in her blood. Just make sure she uses her powers for good. Adrian pulled Lena close. That's what we're here for. Both of them watching their daughter with a kind of fierce love that still sometimes took Lena's breath away. To make sure she knows that power without purpose is just tyranny. When did you get so wise? The day I almost lost you both. Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple. That's when I learned that the only power that matters is the power to choose love over fear, to choose partnership over control, to choose being better over being right. Lena turned in his arms, cupping his face in her hands. I love you, Adrian Vilov. Even when you're infuriating, even when we fight, even when, Adrian finished. Even always. I know. I love you, even always, too. Elena appeared then, climbing into her father's lap with the easy confidence of a child who'd never doubted she was loved. Tell me the story again, she demanded. Which story, little one? The one about how you and Mama found each other again. Elena settled against Adrian's chest, her small hand finding Lena's, about how love is stronger than being scared. Lena and Adrian exchanged a look over their daughter's head, communicating in the wordless language they'd developed over years of partnership. Adrian began, his voice soft in the gathering darkness. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought power could protect him from pain. Lena continued, stroking Elena's hair. And a woman who thought running could keep her safe. Elena chimed in, having heard this story dozens of times. But they were both wrong, because the only thing that keeps you safe is love. Adrian's arms tightened around both his girls. That's right, sweetheart. The only thing that keeps you safe is love, and the courage to choose it, even when it's scary. Lena added, even when it's hard. Adrian finished, even when you don't know if it will work. Elena yawned, her eyes already drifting closed, and they lived happily ever after. Lena corrected gently, not perfectly, but happily because perfect isn't real. But Happa is. Elena murmured, already half asleep. Happy is. They sat there together as darkness fell completely, a family forged in fire and fear and fierce determination. They'd traveled impossible distances to find their way back to each other, and the journey had changed them both in fundamental ways. Adrian was no longer the man who controlled through fear and power. He'd learned to lead through integrity and partnership, to build instead of dominate. Lena was no longer the woman who ran from difficulty. She'd learned to stand her ground, to fight for what she wanted, to believe in her own strength. And Elena would grow up knowing that love wasn't about possession or perfection. It was about choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Years later, when Elena was grown and building her own life, she would look back on her childhood and remember this. Being held between her parents in the quiet darkness, safe and loved, and certain that nothing in the world could shake the foundation they'd built together. Because they'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that the only prison that truly binds is the one we build in our own hearts, and the only freedom that matters is the courage to tear down those walls and choose love instead of fear. Adrian and Lena had chosen love. They chose it in the hospital room where their daughter was born too soon. They chose it through negotiations with enemies and midnight feedings and arguments about boundaries. They chose it through graduate degrees and business transformations and the ordinary chaos of building a life together. They chose it every single day. And in the end, that choice was enough to transform everything. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. There were no perfect endings, no guarantees that tomorrow wouldn't bring new challenges. But there was love, fierce and complicated and real. There was partnership built on respect and trust instead of control. There was a daughter who would grow up knowing that her parents fought for each other as hard as they fought for her. And in the quiet moments, when the world settled into stillness and they held each other close, Adrian and Lena knew they'd found something more valuable than any empire, more powerful than any weapon, more lasting than any legacy. They'd found home, not in a place, but in each other.